Hello, everyone. My name is Zubair, and I'm so excited to bring you an incredible crossover episode with the lovely Jade, UnJaded Jade, as you may know her on YouTube across various platforms and channels. My name is Zubair. I'm the founder of ZNotes, and for the last few months and years, we've built a great friendship and relationship over the years, thinking about what does education mean, what does it mean from the perspective of students, and how can we make sure that student well-being and creating an ecosystem and environment of thriving is central to everything that we do. So I'm so excited to have her join us today. Jade, please introduce yourself briefly, although many will already know who you are.
Of course. Hi, everyone. It is an honor to be here. I love everything ZNotes does. So, yeah, it's great to be here. I began as a study YouTuber almost 9 years ago. So when I was 16, I was doing my GCSE exams in the UK. I was really stressed, and I remember going on YouTube and just looking for advice, seeing if there was a student who had done it before, could tell me how best to revise. And there wasn't really anything. And so I decided when I finished my GCSEs that maybe I could be that for someone else. And I started making revision content. Never thought it would take off because it's quite a nerdy thing to do, isn't it? Creating a channel just about study tips.
You're telling someone
to the right audience. Yeah. No, yeah, you'd get it. But yeah, within that first year, I got to 100,000 subscribers. And since then, I've sort of built a movement of students really trying their best to succeed academically, but also to care for their mental health. I'm really, really passionate about student well-being. I love meditation and mindfulness, and my own journey across the last few years has involved going to a very untraditional university, kind of creating all these wonderful side projects like podcasts, and throughout that process, reflecting a lot on what it means to live a good life and also trying to achieve, but in a way that is healthy for you.
I love that, Jade. And you're being very humble, but today Jade represents over 1 million young voices, representation, people from all over the world. It's always a challenge going to any public event with her because some of her fans will always come and grab her for selfies. But really appreciate you being here with us today. Today's a kind of mixed audience. We have teachers who are thinking and listening to you, thinking, how can they ensure that students' well-being is taken care of? How can they be their champions and supporters when it comes to what happens in the classroom? And then we have many students who are thinking and listening to you, thinking about your journey, thinking about where the challenges came and how you overcome the kind of societal pressure, the family pressure, the personal pressure as well. The overarching question for today is, what's stopping students from achieving their dreams? We always feel like this is the moment where everything is achievable. Technology is there, resources that we'd never imagined could be available, and the fingertips are now here. And yet there is something stopping us. Some of it is societal, some of it is our mental well-being, some of it is actual, real, physical limitation in our societies that's excelling in our lives. So I really want to get into that. But of course, first, a pulse from our listeners today. I really want to understand what you think of this topic. What's the biggest challenge you, as a student or students, if you're a teacher, face today? So you can use the chat to answer this question. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge you, as a student or students, face today? Is it academic pressure and burnout? Is it lack of motivation or focus? Is it anxiety about the future? Or is it feeling lost about purpose and identity? So slightly
great options.
Scary options as well. So feel free to just send your thoughts as in the chat. We'd love to kind of hear from you as well. But Jade, what's something that was maybe what you felt as a student a few years ago and you'll see today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bias everyone listening, but for me, it was definitely academic pressure. Yeah, I was kind of a high achiever. I put that pressure on myself, but also when you build a reputation for yourself of achieving, everyone around you also holds you to that.
Yeah. And you can create your own. Like you set everyone up for that level. Oh, okay, so Jade's gonna have to get so forth. A couple of thoughts coming in from
the comments coming in.
Adia says that it's anxiety, a bit of all, but anxiety is something that's definitely affecting her. Um, we're hearing about the challenge of not knowing what the future will look like. I think that's something a lot of us are facing, whether it's young people as students or even us as adults or semi-adults, as it were. Um, Uncertainty about the
For
future is it.
sure. I think especially with the rise of AI, the job market is more uncertain than it's ever been before. I know there's
Yeah,
a lot fewer graduate jobs statistically. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think that lostness about the future was always there for students, but it's even more amplified right now.
Mm. There's another one which I hope we can dive into because this is something you do really well, Jade. But having too much on my plate, so not really sure what to focus on. Um, what do you think about that?
Mm. This is a great one. We're all such high achievers, aren't we? We want to do a million things. I really recommend having an amazing time management system. So I personally love Notion. It's an amazing tool where you can plan your life. And if you're juggling multiple projects, you have multiple subjects that you're focusing on,
Mm,
trying to divide up the work and then realistically slot that into your calendar makes it more manageable. But also things like scheduling breaks, scheduling time to really relax, be with friends, all of that is so important.
absolutely. So I want to start our conversation with kind of a little bit of a abstract topic, and we'll kind of ground it with
Mm.
um, kind of really habits and things that our listeners can go away with. When we talk to students, that this is, I mean, we're already hearing it in our chat already. Like this sense of pressure comes, right? It's from family, it's from school, it's from society. It's about the fact that the job market is harder, so I need to do even better. It's about getting to university is harder, so I need to do extracurricular activities.
Mm.
It's become incredibly heavy emotionally for students at such a young age, and it's what worries me a lot is the fact that even when we're doing everything we can, we still feel like we're failing. And those high achievers or those students who've really put in time and effort still feel like they're not succeeding. So, what do you think is broken right now in our system that in the definition of success? Why are we continuously feeling that we're failing when we're doing all that we can?
Because society teaches us that we are never enough, that we can always do more, that we are
Mm,
defined in our outputs.
mm,
And you see it, right? Every day you're scrolling social media and it's like you're witnessing other people thriving and succeeding and you're sort of faced with this realization, oh, the way I'm doing life is not enough. I should be having more fun. I should be, enjoying myself more. I should be pushing myself more.
mm,
Even academically, if you've got 75%, you can't be proud of that because you could have gotten 80%. If you got
mm,
80%, you can't be proud of that because you should have gotten 90%. And there is just this constant push to improve, to succeed, and to succeed via metrics that are output driven. And
mm,
I think it's difficult because success that is about your internal world is very difficult to measure. And when something is not measurable, it's difficult to define it as a success. So,
mm,
your own happiness or your fulfillment or your mental health is very hard to get a measure on. And
mm,
so society tends to judge us by what is measurable and output driven. Um, and so I think one of the things that is the worst about the way society is designed is how we just focus on how things look and the output as opposed to the price you're paying to create that output, how you're really feeling,
mm.
and sort of what the well-being behind it.
Yeah. Now, you told me earlier and many YouTube videos yourself that you were always a high achiever and you pushed yourself to get there. And then of course there were parts of your life that didn't go out as you planned. Um, can you tell me a little bit about your personal journey and how maybe the definition of success for you has changed over the years, and why it changes the perspective of what you look at the world like right now?
Sure. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Harry Potter, but there's this character called Hermione Granger. And she's, your classic nerd. She's obsessed with learning, obsessed with books. Every time the teacher asks a question, she's like shooting her hand up. She wants to be the first. She wants to be doing the best. That was me. I also have the bushy hair, that was me. And at school, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to achieve the best.
Mm,
And I developed a reputation quite early into
yeah.
school of always being successful, always being the best. And the issue is when you're not only putting that pressure on yourself, but you've got your parents, you've got your peers, you've got teachers holding you to that standard, you just constantly feel like you should be doing more.
Yeah.
And I remember during GCSEs coming home from school and just feeling so anxious all the time. I always felt like I needed to be studying more. I felt like I needed to be going to the library more. I felt like I felt guilty for sleeping in at the weekend or for going to see friends, because it was almost like every moment I was losing potential learning that could help me get another 2% on that exam. So I became this kind of study robot machine. And I really believed that my sense of self-worth was tied to how I did in my exams. And the reason that that's so toxic is because sometimes how we do in exams is beyond our control.
Yeah.
You know, particularly when you've got one exam to capture your learnings from 2 years sometimes. You know, you don't know what's going to be going on that day, what's going on in your personal life. And so the amount of pressure on that one day, on that one exam is awful. And so I've really gone on a journey in the last few years of learning to detach my sense of self-worth from my achievements. And one of the things that helped me most on that journey was taking a gap year after secondary school. You know, I only ever associated myself with academics, and then to suddenly sort of step outside of that system and be like, who is Jade when she can't be achieving A stars? That was really transformative. And then I attended a very untraditional university called Minerva, where I studied in 6 countries around the world with 160 students from more than 80 countries. And it was a reimagined higher education model based on active learning. So rather than all of your learning being culminating in one big exam, there was formative learning throughout, formative assessment. Every single class contributed to your overall learning grade, and that really helped heal my relationship to achievement, because actually failure is one of the most essential parts of learning, not just doing well in the exam.
Absolutely. And that is the redefinition we kind of were looking for, that failure is not necessarily the most negative thing. In fact,
Yes.
failing and failing fast and failing to learn from those failures is such a big part of our lives. And you know, I hear your story and I kind of feel like I sense similarities in my own journey. I think did you apply to Oxford, or where was it that you?
I did indeed apply to Oxford, and they
Yeah.
rejected me. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
was a
so
tough
did they
time.
me as well.
They
And that was
rejected
my
you as well.
yeah, of course.
Look at us now, Zubair.
Yeah, well, um,
They're
but it's
lost.
similar, like those redirections and those moments of sense. You had this expectation, or your family had an expectation for you, and suddenly those things change, and you are given a new pathway. And I could not be more prouder and more excited and more well looked after by my alma mater, UCL, over these years, even when I've left the uni for years ago. And yeah, those redirections and those kind of decisions that you may not have realized, or this repercussions that would have on other parts of your life, don't become clear until life continues. And you know, I think about ZNotes and I think about building a startup, and I am so grateful that I ended up being in London to build an educational startup that was always surrounded by incredible mentors and events and supporters. And maybe that would not have ever happened if I'd gone to a incredibly academic, and maybe something that would have pushed me a lot into academia, but people probably let me have supported me in my
For
entrepreneurial
sure.
venture horizon. So
Or even, you know,
yes,
being an entrepreneur,
yeah,
one of the main tenets of starting something is willingness to fail. And
yeah.
I wonder if you'd been in an institution like Oxford that prizes success and getting everything right more than anything else, maybe you wouldn't have been as drawn to entrepreneurship because you hadn't learned like the muscle of being okay with failure.
Yeah, that I can always ask those questions. You know, one thing that you were talking, as you shared your journey, was this kind of the sense of not feeling like you were doing something correctly when you were not studying, or if you were not allocating all the time that you had towards that. What we see often is, and many Xenos community members always say that, like, hey, I'm spending hours, I'm spending every moment of free time studying, but I'm not actually seeing the results. And sometimes we're, working hard but not working smartly. I know that you're a best-selling author about everything about studying and how to study well. What was the kind of three biggest kind of findings that you had both in your experiences studying, as well as like once you started doing the research for writing this book? Like, oh my gosh, this, if I had just known this when I was 16 and I was just before my GCSEs, this would have changed.
Yeah. So for context for everyone listening, I studied cognitive science with a specialism in learning theory. So I'm very passionate about evidence-based study methods. And unfortunately, a lot of us are not taught the best ways to study. So I really hope that this moment can maybe help illuminate why some of your study methods aren't working. The first thing I would say is that you have to study smarter, not for longer. I think there's a temptation to think that the more time we invest in studying, the more successful we're going to be. And so many of us who are really dedicated, passionate students will go to the library and be there for 12 hours a day, and we would feel guilty for almost taking breaks. But there's so much research to show that actually just bursts of really intentional studying are far better for you than long periods of time where your brain is getting really exhausted. There's a lot of cognitive effort happening. And so even just being consistent in small chunks, there's something called the Pomodoro technique, where you study for 20 minutes at a time, really intentional, really focused, and then you can have a 5-minute break, 20-minute, 5-minute break, 20-minute, 5-minute break. And you can also do it in different lengths of chunks. You can do a 40-minute one and then a 5-minute break. But integrating those breaks is really important for your brain to come back to a more relaxed state and for information to go into your head more. Secondly, there is a big misconception among students that simply rereading information is going to help. And it's so tempting, right? You're like, oh, I've made all these beautiful aesthetic notes. If I just sit here in the library and I read them, surely that's going to go in. But actually, the more effortful your revision method is, the more likely it is that that information is going to go into your head long term. And so there's a wonderful technique called active recall, which involves testing yourself on the information. And you can use things like flashcards to do that. So anything where you've got a question on one side, you're having to really think about the answer, and then the answer is revealed to you later. That kind of thing where you're doing that effort in between to really ask yourself what the answer is. That's really good for learning. And then there's also this amazing concept called spaced repetition, which is where you need to learn stuff consistently over a long period of time at different intervals. So rather than just cramming, doing one big 10-hour session and then never looking at that piece of information again, it's so much better to even do 5 minutes of recall about that topic every day over a period of time, and that will really go into your memory.
Super cool. And all things that we're big proponents of as well. I love the Pomodoro technique. In fact, at one point of our lives, we had a podcast called the Tomato Timer, timed towards exactly.
Did you?
But
amazing.
Yeah, that's a retired podcast for now. We just want to kind of clarify to some of our listeners as well, like we're definitely going to take all your questions, and as the discussion continues, so please do share your questions even now so we can keep it marked. But we have a couple of questions from our side that we want to run through first. Technology, is it helping or is it distracting?
Oh, what a question. Ironically, I just wrote an essay about this for my master's application. Yes, particularly about AI. I'm not sure how many, I think maybe we can break this conversation down into two things. I think there's AI for learning, and then there's social media and sort of the technological age that is shortening a lot of our attention spans. I think when we first look at AI, a lot of people are very hesitant to use it because they see it as cheating, or they see that it's not going to be helpful. But there is a lot of research that if you learn how to use AI in the correct way, it can be really helpful. But you need to be doing what we said before, which is this active recall. So if you're just going to AI and you're saying, write my essay for me, that's not the best. You're not doing a lot of learning. You know, you need to really be struggling. And so asking AI to guide you through something or to explain an error is much more useful than just asking for answers. But when it comes to kind of social media and the technological age, I do think that one of the main struggles students are facing is attention spans, because we are raised into a world that is fighting for our attention all the time. You know, you flick onto Instagram and it's like every single reel is curated to be interesting to you. And so students are forced to have a lot more discipline than they did before. I really recommend to anyone listening who is struggling with their attention span to get an app blocker, because if you just rely on yourself to click off social media, you're going to feel really lazy and really guilty for going on it. Whereas if you get an app blocker, it kind of kicks you off of these apps in a way
Yeah,
that means you're not relying on your own willpower. And that will also stop you feeling guilty because a past version of you has sort of put those boundaries in already. So I don't think technology is necessarily bad. I think it's just how we use it and how we make sure we put those boundaries in so that we don't get carried away and therefore losing our attention.
I love that. I know some of the things that you shared earlier, things like space repetition. These things actually you can use most LLMs to actually build your own system. And I've seen some amazing, very, very kind of smart students who've actually like just prompted up a space repetition system by just saying, hey, I have these
Yeah.
facts to learn. Test me every day for the next 5 days, or text me every day for the next 3 weeks so I can get it in. And so I think it is a lot to do with how effectively you use it,
Yeah.
and making sure that you're not offloading that cognitive effort that your brain needs to do,
Yes.
and instead using it to create a system that allows you to do it more effectively. Um, I want to kind of pitch in my own one thing. I know that this is something you already support as well, so I don't think it'll contradict. But one thing that I realized years later, after uni and after exams and all these things that I did, was how important my well-being was to my effectiveness in studying and effectiveness in my exams, and generally like being well in all my life. And I love this statement, which is like, how do you work with your brain versus against it? And sometimes we're just like almost like pushing it up a hill rather than like actually sensing when our bodies and our brains want rest or focus more or take a break or not. And you get better and better and closer to your own like self and your sense of self by ensuring that you're not just like being easy to get distracted, because sometimes
Yes.
you just rely on social media to direct what your emotions are, what your energy levels are. So simple things, but like just going to bed early and getting
Yeah.
good night's rest. I cannot explain how much, and there's research that shows how much your knowledge and your memories are better stored if you do that. So instead of the next exam you're cramming all night, maybe just sleep early, and your 3 hours of revision time will be more effective than your 12 hours if you spent all night up. Simple things like that. And then of course what you eat and how you move and how you get outside and physical and get into, whether it's running or any other sport that you're interested in, using those kind of avenues for your well-being, which directly affects your cognitive abilities and your whole being, which definitely affects your studying and your
For sure.
effectiveness in anything
Like
you do.
even I notice, it sounds crazy, but if I was to eat a pack of sweets, I can literally feel in my brain that I have less capacity to remember things after. Like I literally feel like a bit more of like a pounding in my head. Like, oh,
Yeah,
maybe sweets are not the best thing for me to be eating.
yeah.
And so I think it's also just about observing yourself, like
Mm,
observing, when do I work best? Do I work best in the morning? Do I work best in the evening? Oh, when I study with people, do I tend to be more effective or less effective? When I
yeah,
study at home versus in the library, am I more effective, less effective?
yeah.
And I think it's just different for everyone.
It is, and just becoming aware of it, just kind of getting closer to your own instincts and your abilities,
Mm,
and your it's always there. I think we just kind of shroud it away, hide it away from our senses, right? We just don't think about how we're feeling. Sometimes we're just like allowing others to, or other factors, or even technology to determine it and
for
define
sure.
that for us. So, when it comes to defining things, I think we're doing a lot to define our self worth, and we've already talked about it just a little earlier when you said that how you were able to dissociate your self worth from your performance, especially academic performance, relearn that thing. Maybe you did that a lot during your gap year. It's still really hard for us, even when you say that, to really, really believe it. What is something that we can start to do to rebuild the way we define our self worth? What are techniques, or what are things that
Mm.
you went through that allowed you to do so?
I would really recommend splitting your life into categories. Get a piece of paper, split your life into categories. And it can be things like fitness, friends, family, mental health, academic achievement, career interests, and like service for the world. Sort of all these different like areas that make up who you are. And
Yeah.
under each of them, you can write down things you're good at, or things that are going well, or things that you're proud of about yourself. And I think when you take a step back, you can start to realize that you are so much more than just that one little bubble of your life that is about academic achievement.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the section about friendship, you might realize, wow, I'm a really good friend. I really look out for my friends. I check in on them. I get them thoughtful gifts for their birthday. Like, I put so much effort into that, and I am proud of the person that means I am.
Yeah.
And starting to define your sense of self in all those different categories means that if one of those categories is threatened, or maybe you have a bit of failure in that little area, that there's so much more to who you are. That's been really powerful for me, and to really like own the fact that it's a difficult thing to be a kind and compassionate person, for example. And like, I'm really proud of that. Like in a world that can prioritize being really cutthroat and competitive, like it's actually a beautiful thing to be really optimistic and compassionate. And I own that, and I'm proud of that, just as I am proud of getting 90% in that test. So starting to see your life and yourself more holistically is a really good technique.
Yeah. And maybe just to even get to that stage is like just to find space to do so. I think whether it's writing on paper or reflecting or meditating, I think we sometimes are just like constantly running and not taking a chance to even like acknowledge, be grateful, experience those things in a kind of in a moment rather than just rushing away. And so my second question kind of links to that is, in a moment or in a time where our young people are feeling like constantly overwhelmed, what does finding your casual magic mean to us?
So casual magic is this concept that I started talking about online when I was 17, and it was born out of me being a really stressed student, me not doing any of this reflection, and starting to realize that I was not enjoying my own life. And then one day I came back from school, I made myself a cup of tea, and before I started doing my work, I just paused for a moment. And I just focused on the warmth of the cup of tea in my hands, and the smell of the tea, and the way that the first sip of tea felt when I was, swallowing and just feeling like the warmth throughout my body, and kind of just paying attention to the casual magic of a very, very, very small moment is enough to transform a very stressful day into a day that you're grateful for. And so since then, I've been practicing this idea of finding the casual beauty in the mundane things every single day. And it's a practice, it's a habit that I have to work on, just like everyone has to work on, especially on the days where you're in autopilot. You've got a big to-do list to complete. How can you be in the library with a million things to do and still choose just for a moment to look around you, zoom out, and ask yourself, what is casually magic right now? And it can just be as simple as the way that the light is coming into the room, kind of regrounding you. It can be feeling really grateful to have a friend here studying with you and just sort of reflecting on, how lucky you are to have this person in your life. It could be sort of looking at the textbooks in front of you and being like, wow, I'm so lucky to have the chance to learn and to have access to all these resources. Whatever it is, it's kind of this little pause that forces you to come out of the stress and recenter around presence and gratitude. And you can do it anywhere, anytime, and it really transforms your life.
Wow. And it's about really stepping back and taking that pause from everything else that's shouting and all the noise in your world.
Exactly.
I need to start to remember to do this more consecutively and consistently in my life as well. I think it's easy to be on that treadmill and not really consider the things that are really blessings in your life. And it's such a big part of my faith and my belief system as well. And yet, you just get carried away when you're not able to remember it and focus on it.
For sure. And also, the world doesn't give us these reminders. No one's gonna pat you on the back and be proud of you for taking your own pause, right? That is something that you have to do for you.
Yeah, yeah. One of the questions we started to see in our chat a little while ago was this kind of fear of the future. Everything is changing. AI is changing what jobs will exist. Industries are collapsing. I don't know if I'm going to be in the same country that I am right now. Politics in the world are not looking.
Oh, politics. Oh.
Yeah, things aren't looking great, and I feel like we're all feeling anxious about the future. Now, you shared that you had this kind of perfect plan at 17, 18 about going to a certain university and graduating with a certain degree and doing certain things, and then suddenly it didn't happen. Gap year, complete the experimental university, kind of a squiggly career, as it were, to where you are today and where you want to go. But you're happy, you're content, you feel grateful in all those steps that you take. What makes you kind of confident in this, in navigating an uncertain life, and what are the things you do that make it less scary?
It is so difficult as a student because we are expected to plan out the next 10 years of our lives without having lived any of it, without knowing who we're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, without fully even knowing what we're interested in and what matters to us. And so, firstly, to anyone listening who is really scared about the future, I just want to say it makes complete sense because the world is set up to give you an unreasonable amount of pressure at that age. I think you've got to find this balance where you are thinking somewhat rationally about the long-term future. You are thinking, okay, I've got to get a job at some point. I've got to have a career. I've got to earn money. I want to live a stable life, and planning your studies and your choices around that level of rationality. However, you cannot and should not make choices only about rationality. No matter what your parents are telling you, no matter what your teachers are telling you, no matter what politics in your country are saying about the future of your country, you cannot only listen to the rational perspective, because in order to live a fulfilled life, you've also got to be really brave. And bravery requires you making little changes throughout, course correcting what your initial amazing rational plan of the 10 years said, based on how you're feeling, right? So maybe you decide to study something at university that you think is the grand plan of your next 10 years, and then you end up hating it. To me, it's that moment that actually defines who you are, whether you are brave enough to change subject, to change path, because you shouldn't have to live a life where every single day you're waking up not wanting to go to work or not wanting to study that subject because you just hate it so much. And I think what gives me a lot of faith is only ever needing to be really sure of the next step. Because as long as you're sure of the next step, then your life will unfold in a series of lots of small, correct steps. So maybe you don't know the full career that you're going to do, but if you feel really passionate about this subject, so passionate that you know you can make something of it, then that's the right next step. That's what gives me faith, but it's challenging.
Yeah, but if you'll allow me to synthesize some of what you've shared, what's interesting is that you're not necessarily saying follow your dreams and that's it, which is sometimes what we are like. There's this, we have polar voices, right? There's one who's saying there's a perfect plan and you've got to be disciplined and follow it every step of the way. And then there's the other dreamer that's oh, you don't need any plan, just imagine it and just try to get there.
Follow your heart's desire.
But you're talking about something that's slightly in the middle, where there is a sense of, yes, you're imagining a future that you would be happy in, but you're also being rational about what steps may be required to get there. And you're accepting the risk and reality that things don't happen as according to plan. Things change, not just because of you. You change a lot as well. That's another thing. But literally every single moment, things around you are changing. Who could have predicted COVID? Who could have predicted a number of major things that are happening in our world right now? Impossible. And yet we adapted. We survived, and that's the best things that humans do. We adapt. We are able to make something out of nothing. And I've kind of I've also lived a very kind of squiggly life in terms of careers, and everyone's like kind of not sure about where I am going to go next. Um, and
Are you
all
sure?
along, I'm not sure either. But all along, I think the thing that's always been, let's say, centering me is maybe something of a purpose that I feel is
Mm,
super important that I wish to contribute towards. And as long as I'm doing that and I'm taking the next step, which Jade that you said, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Um, I feel like we're giving these kind of two voices, either the super strict follow a plan or be a dreamer, but the middle is the kind of the one that we're not really sure about. But it does require bravery. It does
mm,
require logical. It does require being experimental and risky, but also requires being calculated about those risks. It's not being a complete like you know imagining something and following it, but doing it in a way that is realizable. I think that's something that's is really important for our young people to understand, and teachers and
mm.
educators, our mentors, our elders, our parents, whoever we look up to, also to guide us that, hey, the world doesn't look clear right now. You think you want to do this, we'll support you. You think you may not want to do this in 10 years, we'll support you. And
Yeah.
we believe in you being able to adapt to whichever scenario the world pushes us at. So I think
I
this kind
have
of
yeah, can I
yeah,
share a quote that I think is quite
please.
relevant?
Yeah.
Um, there's a quote that says, "I'm inspired by the path that I'm on." So it's not saying I'm inspired by the end goal that I want to achieve, but you're
Mhm.
almost feeling inspired by the way that you are walking that path, by the
Mhm.
values that you have, by the way that you are choosing those next steps. And you can't
Yeah.
see where the path leads, but you feel
Mhm.
inspired by the path itself. And I also think that's just a lot more realistic because in life, the path is actually never ending. Because even if
Mhm.
you achieve the dream job, there's still a whole next step to
Mhm.
that path. So
Mhm.
all we can ever feel inspired by is walking along each next step.
Yeah, I really like that quote. Thanks so much for sharing. And maybe like if in this kind of retrospective state that we're in, if you could sit down with 17-year-old Jade, who may have just been told that she's not going to her dream university, what will you tell her about her future self and where you are today?
Mm, I would tell her, you don't even know how wonderful your life is going to be and how this rejection was the best thing that ever happened to you and you can't see it yet. And I would just tell her to trust and to really allow the feeling of uncertainty because I think sometimes when we're desperately clutching to know the next thing, that's when we can sometimes make the wrong choice, right? I think allowing a little bit of space for the right thing to arise is also okay. And in my case, that was taking a gap year. A lot of
Mhm.
people in my life told me, do not take a gap year. Head girls don't take gap years. Top students don't take gap years. But that was really essential because it taught me a lot about who I was outside of academia. And that gave me the strength to pursue the untraditional path at university. And so allowing yourself the time to sit in the uncertainty, I think, is actually allowed.
Yeah, and it's not easy. um,
Mm-mm.
Being in that state of not knowing what's going to happen and where we're going to go, but I feeling like, I mean, as entrepreneurs, I think we have to kind of we've chosen the life of living in uncertainty every single
For
day. So
sure.
yeah, I want to bring our educators, some of our elder listeners into the conversation as well. So we've talked a lot about like what it feels like to be a student and where the challenges are and what we can personally do to make changes. But at the same time, this is not a solo journey. We're surrounded by
Mm,
people who love us and care for us. Some of them are parent figures, some of them are mentor figures, some of them are just peers that we respect and care about. For them, what does it mean and like this kind of continuously changing life that especially students are going through right now, what does it mean for them? What sort of role do they need to increasingly play, and how can they support these next generation in a way that helps them thrive in their future?
mm. Firstly, I just want to say to all the teachers, thank you so much for everything you do. You guys are utterly changing the world and changing people's lives every day. And I don't think teachers get enough credit. So thank you so much for being here. Even the fact that you're being here and caring enough about your students to watch this is just incredible. So thank you. What can teachers do to best support students in this uncertain world? I think there's two things I'd love to highlight here. The first is about the exam pressure. I understand that teachers are also under an immense amount of pressure to deliver all the content, to make their students, get top grades, kind of for the school's ranking as well as the students' own personal lives. And I would say allowing yourself to be human enough in the classroom to empathize with the pressure that students are feeling and to almost share your own reflections on that pressure actually is the authenticity that students crave. I think if you as a teacher are just kind of adding on to that exam pressure, students are going to just spiral even more. Whereas if you meet them where they're at and you say, look, I know you've got a massive amount to learn. I know that the stakes are really high. I know that you're terrified to go on your Christmas holiday break because you've got so much learning to do. But like, I'm with you and I support you and I'm here to listen. To me, that is in itself doing an amazing job because students just want to feel heard and seen. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to navigating the uncertainty of students' futures, never underestimate the power of a good question. I think teachers are in a really unique position because they get to know students at a personal level and kind of an interest level and what really lights them up in the classroom. And I think teachers being able to notice the part of a subject that lights a student up and ask the right question can really set a student on the right trajectory. Like, oh, Jade, I really noticed that in my English class, when you got to write a story, you just lit up and you wrote way beyond the word limit because it was just so easy for you. And have you considered writing more stories? Just a question like that, I think, is enough for me to go away and think, wow, I'm a storyteller. I should be doing more with stories. And so never underestimate the power of being observant, being human, and asking a good question.
I think that's so beautiful. I think it applies to many more than just students because when as you said that, I was just reflecting back, and I think that there's so many moments where I wasn't really guided to do something, but just asked questions to just think about something. And I'm very grateful. Like, yes, I went through school and uni, but I then continued to live a life of uncertainty through being an entrepreneur. And I am very lucky to have an amazing group of mentors and advisors in my journey. And I sometimes think back. I've asked to some of my mentors as well, like, hello, you knew me at 19, 20, you knew me at 25, and you gave me this guidance. You didn't tell me to do something. You asked me a question. Why didn't you tell me what to do? And you saw me make that mistake or take a slightly unconventional path. Why didn't you tell me not to? Because if it was you, if it was the most logical thing to do, you would have advised against it. But you almost like got me to make those mistakes or try those things or re-ask a question to clarify rather than answer it and tell me what to do. And I really feel like the greatest individuals and most influential people in our lives don't tell us what to do, but help us understand who we are and see more of ourselves. And that's through questions, that's through guidance, that's through noticing things and sharing them with it. And that's all. And that noticing and that guidance is often all you need. The capacity is there. Sometimes the confidence is missing. You need that bravery, you need that push. And I'm very grateful for the teachers and mentors and advisors over the years who've been in my life, who asked those questions that have changed the way I've looked at the world, to be honest, and even today.
For sure. Yeah. We love our teachers.
Jade, I want to hear about your next journey. So you've been on this kind of pathway of telling students how to study, to then telling students how to navigate their career and university life, and then telling students how to stay grounded and take care of their mental well-being. Now you're kind of looking at the world, engaging on various forums and educational experiences. We had a great opportunity to meet in Doha a few weeks ago in the Y Summit. Where are you going next, and what matters most to you?
I believe that a lot of education systems around the world are fundamentally broken in the fact that they just prioritize rote memorization of facts without deeply questioning why this information matters. They're not teaching students how to critical think. They're not teaching students to connect to themselves and find their own unique spark. It's just too exam heavy. And I'm really interested currently in exploring questions around what education can look like, particularly secondary education. It's always been my interest area. I've always been interested in helping students navigate exams. But now I'm almost asking the question, what if exams didn't exist? You know, what should we be teaching in schools? How should we be teaching it? And one of my goals for this year is to tell stories and amplify voices that help students see the education system as malleable. Because so many of us have been taught that we just accept the system we're given.
Yeah.
But what if you were told that you could imagine something different? What would you imagine? What would you want to learn if you knew that you're going to be graduating into a world with a lot more automation and AI? Like, what would you want to be learning? What are those skills? And for example, in the UK, we don't receive a financial education in school. We don't learn about politics. We don't receive kind of a technological education about AI. And those are things that students really, really want and crave. And so I'm really interested in helping students find their voices in talking more about what they want school to become. So, oh my God, do you know what's crazy? The other day, the Department for Education, as in the UK government education branch, slid in my DMs. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm over here talking about the system and the system just slid in my DMs. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to be in contact with more of the education ministers this year and advocate for a lot of the changes that teachers want, but also students want. And yeah, I don't fully know. I don't have all the answers, right, to what education should be, but I want to inspire more people to be asking those questions.
I love that, and I love this idea of amplifying voices and perspectives, and bringing it to people that can make the change happen. People like the Department of Education are right to be reaching out to you for that. Jade, thanks so much for sharing your journey and sharing some really, really incredibly actionable advice pieces for our community as well. I want to open up to the many listeners and viewers with us right now for any of their questions. I did see a couple come up already, so I'm going to bring those up.
Some great questions.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions that you've been waiting to ask and share, please do send it to the chat. But I want to start with Umama's question, which talks about taking the first step. And you said that a couple of times, right? Like, I know the first next step. But when you're kind of signing your life away to a degree and choosing a specific subject, sometimes it's not clear about whether that is what you really, really want to do. So I know that you did a degree which kind of almost like took away that decision. Maybe you can share a little bit about that and how you could take that first step, especially when it comes to choosing a university degree.
I actually think one of my first pieces of advice would be to start to explore your interests outside of school. So, for example, doing your own deep dive research onto topics that interest you, maybe going out into your community and starting to question what problems exist. Like, for example, if you notice that there's like a lot of homelessness in your area, maybe starting to think about that as a problem that you're passionate about and kind of research about it. And the more that you retrain yourself to have curiosity about the world, the more that your own interests will be revealed to you. And perhaps you just need more time to do that. You need to make space in your calendar. Perhaps you need a gap year to do that. I think that's also okay. But being really intentional about the search for interests. I think we have this idea that, we'll wake up one day and our passion will be revealed to us. I'm so sorry. That's not how it works. You have to sadly go out and try and find those passions. So that would be a recommendation. And then I actually went to a liberal arts university, and as someone who is a generalist who has always loved learning all the subjects, I got to spend the first year of my degree studying 5 subjects and then narrowing down my degree into cognitive science from second year into 4th year. So there are options, there are degrees that let you have more flexibility if you feel more like a generalist.
Yeah. And I think that's super important to also share that like there are increasingly unique courses available, and sometimes we're not even exposed to them in our
Yeah.
school life, which allow you to be a lot more adaptive and kind of take things and adjust them. Maybe you know kind of a sense of which field you want to be in, maybe like the faculty, but you don't really know whether it's that specific degree or job that you want to achieve. Um, there are some
Maybe I could
incredible.
share
Yeah, please
I
do.
share my brother's experience.
Yes, of
So
course.
my brother knew that he was vaguely interested in business. So he was like, okay, do I go to a business university? But then he found a university that was quite new in Berlin called Code. And it's a university for entrepreneurs where you get graded based on creating companies with your
Wow.
friends. And so it's very untraditional, but it's his dream. And now he's started a company where his product is now in 1,000 shops across Europe, and he's still in
Wow.
university and like being graded on that. And so there really are innovative programs if you're willing
Yeah.
to search for them and take a
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah. And I think, in the world that we're entering, we definitely need to be looking for things that may not be as traditional as maybe our parents had done before. I want to bring Alex's question in as well. So Alex is asking, how do you set the goals for yourself for 2026 so that you can achieve all of them by the end of the year? And I know that I asked you this question a little while, not too long ago, actually, as well, because I'm not someone who's good at setting New Year resolutions and actually both the reflection and the setting part. So talk me through your technique and how you keep it going.
Alex, you need to watch my recent YouTube video where I literally walk you through my system. But in short, I recommend 2 kind of stages. The first stage is to reflect on the state of your life. So this can be reflecting on your whole past year, but can also just be kind of reflecting on the moment right now. And there's an amazing free booklet online called Year Compass. And you can download it, you can print it off, and it asks you incredible guided questions about your life. So you'll look at all the different areas, like friends and family and career and studies, and it'll ask you questions. And I think from doing that reflection, you get a really good state of where your life is right now. And then once you've done that reflection and you're looking at goals for 2026, my first invitation would be to set goals that actually matter to you and where you are at in your life right now. Not goals that you think you should have, not goals that sound good to other people, like becoming a millionaire, becoming a doctor, like really tangible, realistic goals to where you are in your life and your interests. So that for someone who maybe struggles to take public transport alone, that could literally be, I will take the tube 3 times alone this year. And maybe for someone else, that is not a goal, but for you, that's like a massive achievement. And rooting your goals in something that actually matters to you, that would be my first tip, because then they're more likely to happen.
Yeah.
And then secondly, building check-ins into your year. So whatever you want to do, I like to have quarterly goals. So in the first quarter, I will have split my year goals roughly into the quarters. So I think I'm going to achieve these ones in quarter 1. I think I'm going to achieve these ones in quarter 2, and to review those goals as the quarters go on. But yeah, I recommend, I have a free Notion template that's in that video if you want to check it out.
I love that. And I think it's so important to realize that goals are really very personal, and they really need who you are and what you want to become. And sometimes it's okay for it not to be a full transformation, but just I want to keep doing what I'm doing as well.
Yes, it takes effort to keep doing good habits.
For sure. I have one final question, because we're getting to the end of our hour as well, which is very sad. But a question that I'm sure you've been asked a lot, and one that I also keep thinking about as well, which is holding attention. I might want to generalize this from studying, because I know that we've talked a little bit about this, but in a world where it's so noisy, our attention spans are literally decreasing. There's research that shows that. What do we do to bring that to some level of sanity?
My honest recommendation would be to start meditating. Meditating is a practice that there's so much research improves your focus. It does the opposite of what things like social media do to your brain. Essentially, what meditating is just closing your eyes and just focusing on your breathing for the amount of time you're meditating. And every time your brain wanders somewhere else, you're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, you're thinking about this conversation you have with a friend, you're trying to bring your attention back to the breath. And then your brain wanders again, you bring it back to the breath. And that act of training your focus back to the breathing increases your attention span. And so if you're doing that practice once a day in the morning, you're not only building that focus, but then when you actually want to lock in, like you've got a revision session, you've got an exam, you've learned this practice. So I would do it to this day. Right before I study, I'll sit and focus on my breathing for 5 minutes so that I can retrain my focus. And then the second I study, I'm actually there. So I recommend learning meditation.
I love that. And meditation can take different forms though as well, right? I
Yeah.
actually, if you don't mind me, I loved your experience of being in silent meditation. I wonder if you could share something from there as well.
Oh my God, yeah. People are going to think I'm crazy. But last year I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat. No talking, no eye contact, 10 hours of meditation a day. And it was one of the most transformative things I ever did to kind of especially see myself outside of the lens of achievement and to really get to know myself at a deeper level.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine what that would look like, especially me being so talkative. I'll be like, oh my goodness. But I do appreciate this. It's such an important part of our life, and I think many of us have opportunities to do it through different ways. Like as you know, Jade, I love running, and that's my meditation of the day. I started my day sunrise runs, and it's a way for me to be outside of technology devices. I can't respond to anyone, and for that, whether it's 30 minutes or 25 minutes, whatever it is, I'm kind of isolated in my own thoughts and in my own thinking. People love to walk. People have prayers during the day, and there are all these moments that we could turn into meditation if they're not already, or just be more mindful about them when we're practicing them as well. Because it's easy to kind of just get part of a routine and forget that this is really helping us be who we are. We're getting to the end of our session. I just want to say a big thank you, Jade. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and things that kind of I'm left with are, firstly, the importance of really identifying your self-worth without your external factors or external achievements, and finding ways and taking journeys to be able to define that, because it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just say, I want to, this is my self-worth from my grades, and then it happens next second. You have to go through a journey to be able to achieve that. We talked about how technology and how study habits and specific cognitive science proven methodologies really boost your studying, and not necessarily just adding too many hours to the day. And then I loved also the fact that we got a chance to talk a little bit about the importance of our ecosystem, our community, and how we can be supported in this kind of challenging, uncertain time for all of us. So it's been a journey just talking through this with you as well. So really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to meet and share your journey with the community as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zubair. And thank you to everyone listening for such wonderful questions. We love active listeners.
They're definitely active listeners. Thank you, everyone. Please do check out ZNotes if you need anything in terms of exam revision resources, our incredible Discord community when it comes to advice and peer learning, and of course, at UnJaded Jade across YouTube, Insta, and a bunch of other places where you can hear her talk, give you daily motivational speeches, and also really cool YouTube videos, including the New Year resolution one, which I recommend. Thank you, Jade. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Zubair. Thank you, guys. Bye.